I don't have a production team. I don't have a lot of fancy equipment. It's just me, and I'm I'm pretty far behind on content creation, so I'm not. I'm still learning how to use all this technology. I've got it down so that I can show you this. This is pretty good. I've been doing pretty good. I've got a microphone that works now, and I have a camera that shows you the table. We're good. So I wanted to show you really quick some of these warps that my son painted, and I'll take some pictures and post them later so you can see them. I've got them tied up right now. But somebody had mentioned it looked like he had created quite a few black colors. While each one of his warps came out different, they're not all black. Actually, some of them, this one is actually quite lovely. What I want to start in in our Facebook group is a discussion on what to do with those warps that you're not very inspired by. So I let my son dye yarn in here quite a bit, and some of it is not inspiring, but it isn't. I've used it, and it comes out really pretty, but it does require your thinking cap to figure out how to use it. So like this one, I could be inspired to use this one because I find these to be very lovely colors. I would maybe not be so inspired by this one I'm about to show you, which is a lot of brown and green with some flecks of blue, and it is not typically the kind of colors that I like to work with in a weaving. But I think there are some possibilities for this. And just because I personally wouldn't want to use a warp like this, that doesn't mean somebody else would not be inspired by something like this. So everybody has their own taste. And sometimes you create things that, I was going to call this whole section duds. Things that you call duds, but they're not duds. They're just, they require a little more thought process as to how to use them to make them something that you were, maybe, because originally maybe you're not inspired by something that you've created. We're all going to do it. I dye stuff all the time. Some of my stuff I consider duds. But that just because I'm not inspired doesn't mean that they aren't something that I could be challenged by to use. I think it would be a fun challenge for our group to try to use some of these yarns that we're less inspired by. So I'm thinking about how we might approach that as a group, because I would love to discuss what to do with some of these, or what you might want to do with something. I would love to see some of the things that you've dyed or painted that you are just not very inspired by, and maybe we can start some discussions on what opportunities others see in things that you are less enthused by. So I think even though these were all dyed with differently, but I'm wondering even if they would work together in a project. Although I might be willing to, I might want to keep that red one out for something else. Anyway, so this is something I've been thinking about, and I'd like to use these. I mean, my son dyed them. I would love to see them in a pretty project somewhere. But pretty might take some work. Anyway, so let me take a look at this message here. Somebody's here to say hello. Hi, whoever is here. Anyway, I am just going to do a brief demo today. Just nothing particularly mind-blowing. I needed to actually, so right now at my house, we are in the process of building a new house, and it is taking up all of our free time and energy outside of the studio. So as soon as I leave here, I'm going to go pick up kids, and we're going to go straight back to painting house. And you can see here's the last color I painted. It's on my shoes as well. So I have an order that I need to get painted before I leave today, and I thought I would go ahead and just paint it with you. It's my Autumn Fields colorway, and in case you haven't seen my Autumn Fields colorway, it's just a burgundy, a gold, and a green, which, if I'd be willing to share this with you, is literally just a paint made with with burgundy by Jacquard. And the yellow color is made with antique gold. And the green color is made with avocado. They're not very complicated paint colors. I just happen to like these 3 paint colors by Jacquard, and I carry all 3 of those in my shop in small jars if you want to experiment with them. So I have a couple of things that I do when I'm painting for my shop. A lot of times I use zip ties to zip together a group of warps that I'm painting together, so that when I go to pull them, when I'm washing them and scouring them, getting them soaked in the soda bucket, it's easy for me to then pair them back up again when I lay them out on here, so that they all line up pretty easily. So I don't usually dye or paint less than 4 of anything, because it's just not worth my time to do less than 4. And so I'll zip tie the ends of warp pairings, and that makes it so if somebody wants 2 of the same warp, I can make sure that there's 2 available that match. But I was thinking while I was painting this today, if you want to watch me paint for a little bit, I would talk a little bit about shifting. So I always paint end to end, just because I like to have the control of my color spacing. Or I could do accordion fold, but this one I can't accordion fold because the colors don't transpose. When you accordion fold, the colors bend back on each other, and this one doesn't do that, so I just went ahead and stretched it out straight. But if I wanted to dye multiple warps or paint multiple warps the same colors, but maybe I want those colors to shift a little bit, I can just take my warp, I can take a second warp and just shift it, knowing what project I may or may not be working on would determine how much I would want to shift that. So that when I paint this, they don't line up exactly right, but the color transitions will be spaced the same all the way across the warp. That guarantees that when you go to put this on the loom, the colors will shift, but they'll shift with each other. What's the words for that? So that you don't have to worry about, if you're interested in colors not crossing into each other, or that they're transitioning at the same rate, then if you paint them all together but you shift one, I don't know if you can shift it a lot or a little depending on your project, then you can control how that shifting happens. And then once you have that done, if you could do all sorts of interesting things on the loom with a shifted warp. I've used I have that free pattern on my website for the riverbed stained glass windows pattern, and in that I use a shifted warp, which could be painted in this way, and you would just shift it like 3, 4, or 6 inches, and then it creates a nice little shift in the scarf in one section. So you could just paint a small amount of warp for that shifted area, and you can even count how many threads you need for that. I always work from the same amount of threads, and then I just save what's left for later, which at some point I'm going to show you what I do when I have a warp that has more threads that I want to use, how to save that for later. But then I could also mix my shifted yarns in a single warp or in a single project, and so that they create colors that sort of blend with each other a little differently. So there's a lot of design opportunities with just a little bit of a shift in your painting. So I'm just going to do a little bit of painting for Autumn Fields so you can see what that looks like, in case you were curious. I think I might have drank a little too much coffee today. I feel a bit jittery. So again, this is a paint made with what I would say is it's just a diluted avocado, antique gold, I don't like to pour these in cups until right before I use them, just in case, especially avocado. Avocado has a tendency to settle. And so I don't pour them into the cups I'm going to use until right before I paint, so I can give them a little bit of a shake. Avocado and sun yellow both do that. No matter how much you dissolve them, they don't truly ever dissolve, they settle. So you do need to make sure to give those a good shake before you use them. So I'm going to dye. Autumn Fields is nice because it's 3 colors that repeat. Oop, I'm sloppy today. That repeat across, they just repeat color 1, color 2, color 3, 1, 2, 3. So it doesn't really matter which one I start with and which one I end with. There's only 3 of them, so I don't have to worry about keeping track of color order. I love these cups. I'm thinking about looking into getting some of these particular cups for my shop at some point if I can ever afford the inventory. I use them a lot with pouring paint because it has the 3 corners, and all 3 corners have very specific spouts, so it's really easy to pinpoint exactly where I'm going to pour my dye out. In case you were wondering, I am painting on cotton today. When I first designed this colorway, I used to transpose it so it would go green, yellow, red, yellow, green. And it ended up, the burgundy ended up always looking a little bit paler because it doesn't have this nice brown that develops in between the burgundy and the green, the avocado, which I think suits this warp really nicely. So now I paint it in this order. I'd be curious to know, for those of you who have been painting and been watching my methods, what you think of this particular method of painting that I use. Because I know I paint kind of slow and careful, and I feel like sometimes it might be a little bit obnoxious how long it takes for me to paint. So I am slow, but I am very interested in transitions being very smooth. So I take my time with those. I'll get to the other end of this and then we'll see what the shift looks like a little bit. Anybody else join us today? It's hard for me to tell. So with these Wednesday lives, I've actually really been enjoying doing these. It's given me some new things to think about and to talk about. But also, I would love some feedback on them if you've been watching them, either live or later on. If you found them useful, if there's something you would like to see me work on, I would love to hear it in the comments. Anytime you watch this, I would love to hear it in the comments. I'm wondering if we need to reconsider when I schedule these Facebook Lives, which again, my time in the studio is a little bit limited, but I could shift the day, or I could try to shift to a slightly earlier or slightly later time, if that would be feasible. I know one of our watchers lives way out on the West Coast. I don't know if I want to go too much earlier, but let me know. if there is, because Monday when I'm in my studio, I'm available to do these lives in my studio on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I am here usually between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. Eastern, at which time I do all of my work for the shop and do these lives and do my photography. I do all my order fulfillment from home. A little insight into my business. All right, I'm just going to put one more color down here. This is one of those warps I started painting a while back, and I haven't had the joy of actually weaving with this colorway yet. Because I am actually really into this colorway. Oops. My yellow came out a little shy, but that's okay. Push it that way a little bit. All right, let me keep that from migrating too far down. Clean up a little bit. Double check that I'm getting through on the cotton. Looks pretty good, actually. Yep. And so let's see what that shift looks like. If I move this up, I'm going to separate these out a little bit. These two warps down here are tied together, so I'm going to leave them together. But then if I grab this one and shift it down to match this other one, this is how it'll end up looking in the weaving. So the colors will all be shifting at the same rate because I painted them together, so that you don't have any strange places where one is transitioning more slowly than the other, and then they kind of cross into each other. If you want that kind of control, this is a great way to do it. And that is really all I have for you today. So again, shout in the comments. Oh, where's the camera? Here we are. I always get it backwards. The camera and the computer are going in different ways, and I always get it backwards. But yeah, let me know in the comments if there's any, you've watched this video later and you had some thoughts about the technique, if you have some thoughts about things you'd like to see, or if you have any other questions about what's going on in your studio, just put it in the comments below. I'm going to start to think about what I might do during a Wednesday Live in the coming months, and I would love some ideas from you. I'd love to know what's going on in your studios and how I can help you. So, and then watch out for some posts on, I'd like to start some discussions on how to be inspired with warps that are less inspiring. So take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk soon.